Everyone. For our week on doubt, today we're looking at what Jesus says about suffering. Some were present at that time who told Jesus about the Galileans whose blood Pilate had mixed with their sacrifices. He replied, "Do you think these Galileans were more sinful than all other Galileans because they suffered these things? No, I tell you, but unless you have a change of heart, you'll die just like they did. Or what about those 18 people who were killed when the Tower of Siloam fell on them? Do you think that they were owed more than everyone else who lives in Jerusalem? No, I tell you, but unless you have a change of heart, you will die just like they did." So this story is the closest we get to Jesus explaining why bad things happen to good people. It's the question that's at the root of many of our doubts. He's asked about some faithful people who went all the way from Galilee to Jerusalem to worship, and the corrupt Roman governor Pontius Pilate had them killed as they were making their sacrifice. And then Jesus himself gives another example of some people who died in a freak accident, an earthquake causing a tower to fall. So you have human evil and natural disasters, the two sources of most of our questions. But Jesus doesn't tell us why. No, well, here's why it's okay. Here's how this is all part of God's plan. He doesn't blame God. He doesn't blame Satan. He doesn't blame the brokenness of creation. He especially doesn't blame the people themselves who died. Jesus, we see over and over, has no time for this explanation that the people who suffer from disasters are somehow responsible because of their sin. And so that last part is nice, but I mean, don't you wish he said more? Sometimes suffering just is. And so what's needed is not actually an answer, it's a change in perspective. Jesus calls us to change our hearts because that's when change really happens. We don't change to avoid death, we change how we look at death. Right? Suffering happens. So how can you still live in faith? I mean, really, would the way that you live your life really be that different if you had the perfect answer to why suffering happens? Would that make you more loving and more compassionate? Suffering actually can be one of the most common paths to spiritual growth, but it only happens if our hearts are changed enough to be open to that kind of growth. And so with open and changed hearts, when we go through these things, we look for what God is doing, even now. How can I let my life be more fruitful, not in spite of, but maybe even because of what I suffer? It's not so much about why, it's about what now.